My name's Darren Brooks. 3 months ago, I stood in a courtroom and watched my entire life disappear. People think divorce happens in a single moment. They imagine a judge signing papers, a gavel striking wood, 2 people walking away. But that is not how it feels. The real divorce starts long before the paperwork. It begins with silence. Small silences. The kind that slowly grow between 2 people who once could not stop talking. My wife Jasmine and I had been married for 8 years. When we first met, neither of us had money. We lived in a small apartment with old furniture bought from thrift stores. The refrigerator made strange noises at night. The air conditioner worked only when it felt like cooperating. Sometimes we laughed about it. Sometimes we sat on the floor eating takeout because we could not afford a dining table. Back then none of that mattered, because we had each other. At least I thought we did. I worked as an operations supervisor for a shipping company. The pay was decent, but far from impressive. Every month I paid the bills. Every month I tried to save a little money. Every month I promised myself things would improve. Jasmine worked in marketing. She was ambitious, confident, driven. Those were some of the things I loved most about her. But over time something changed. The woman who once appreciated simple things began chasing expensive ones. At first it was harmless. Luxury handbags, designer shoes, weekend trips she saw online. Then social media entered our marriage like a third person sitting at the table. Every evening she scrolled through pictures of celebrities, influencers, entrepreneurs, people showing off yachts, private jets, mansions, exotic vacations. I noticed her spending hours looking at those images, comparing our lives to theirs, comparing me to them. One night while we were eating dinner, she held up her phone. Look at this. She showed me a photo of a couple standing beside a Lamborghini. The caption talked about financial freedom. Jasmine sighed. Must be nice. I nodded. Yeah, it must be. She stared at me. You ever wonder why we never have things like that? The question caught me off guard. I laughed lightly. Probably because Lamborghinis cost more than our apartment. She did not laugh. Instead, she looked disappointed. That was the first time I felt a crack forming between us. After that, the comments became more frequent. Small at first, then impossible to ignore. You should be making more money by now. You need to think bigger. Other men our age own companies. Other men our age invest in real estate. Other men our age are building wealth. Every time she said other men, it felt like another stone added to my chest. I worked hard. Sometimes 60 hours a week. Sometimes more. But somehow it never seemed enough. One evening I came home exhausted. A truck shipment had arrived late. I had spent 12 straight hours solving problems. All I wanted was a shower and sleep. Instead, I walked into the living room and found Jasmine waiting, her arms crossed, her expression cold. We need to talk. Those 4 words are never good. I sat down across from her. What happened? She took a deep breath. I cannot do this anymore. My stomach tightened. Do what? This life. The room suddenly felt smaller. What are you talking about? She looked around the house. Look at us, Darren. 8 years. 8 years, and this is all we have. I stared at her. I thought she was joking, but her eyes told me otherwise. This house. This neighborhood. These bills. These struggles. I am tired of it. I felt my pulse quicken. We have a good life. She laughed. A good life. Is that what you call this? That laugh hurt more than yelling ever could. I spent years trying to provide for us. Years. And in a few seconds she made it sound worthless. I leaned forward. Jasmine, what is really going on? She looked directly into my eyes. I want a divorce. The words hit me like a truck. For a moment I honestly thought I misheard her. A divorce. She nodded. Yes. I sat frozen. Everything around me seemed distant. The television, the lamp, the sound of traffic outside. It all faded. How long have you felt this way? A while. A while. Not weeks. Not days. A while. Meaning she had been planning this while smiling beside me, while eating dinner with me, while sleeping next to me. I felt sick. Can we work on it? Can we go to counseling? Can we fix this? She shook her head. No. Why? Her answer would stay with me forever. Because I do not want to spend the rest of my life waiting for you to become somebody. The sentence sliced straight through me. I remember staring at her, waiting for her to take it back. waiting for her to say she was angry, waiting for her to say she did not mean it. But she never did. Instead, she stood up. I deserve more than this, Darren. I deserve more than struggling. I deserve more than average. The next few weeks felt like a nightmare. Lawyers became involved. Paperwork appeared. Arguments replaced conversations. Every room in the house felt different. Colder. Hostile. Like a battlefield. Then came the financial discussions. Those were somehow even worse. The house would go to her. Most of the savings would go to her. The furniture would remain with her. By the time everything was finished, it felt like my entire existence had been divided and distributed. The day I packed my belongings was one of the hardest days of my life. A single suitcase. That was all I carried. 8 years reduced to a suitcase. As I walked toward the front door, I looked back one last time. Jasmine stood in the kitchen, watching. No emotion, no sadness, nothing. Just distance. I wanted her to stop me. I wanted her to say she made a mistake. Instead, she said something I will never forget. Maybe now you will figure out how to become successful. Then she closed the door. I stood outside staring at the house. The house we once dreamed about together. The house that no longer belonged to me. Rain began falling. Slowly at first. Then harder. Cars passed by. People hurried along sidewalks. Life continued as if nothing had happened. But for me, everything had changed. I loaded my suitcase into my old car, sat behind the wheel, and finally broke down. I cried harder than I had ever cried in my life. Not because I lost the house, not because I lost the money, but because I lost the person I thought would stand beside me forever. That night I drove to a tiny apartment on the edge of the city. The place was barely larger than a hotel room. The walls were plain. The furniture was cheap. The silence was unbearable. I placed my suitcase on the floor, sat on the edge of the bed, and stared at the ceiling. For the first time in years, there was no one beside me. No voice. No conversation. No future I could clearly see. Just uncertainty. Just pain. And just when I thought I had reached the lowest point of my life, I had no idea that fate was already preparing. Something that would change everything forever. The first month after the divorce felt like surviving a storm that refused to end. Every morning I woke up hoping the pain would be smaller. Every morning I discovered it wasn't. The tiny apartment never felt like home. It felt temporary, like a place people passed through while waiting for life to begin again. The bedroom was barely large enough for a bed and a dresser. The kitchen looked like something from an old motel. The living room contained a second-hand couch I bought from an online marketplace for less than $100. At night, I could hear my neighbors arguing through the walls. Sometimes I heard babies crying. Sometimes I heard televisions playing late into the night. The noise reminded me I wasn't alone. But somehow it made me feel even lonelier. The hardest part wasn't losing the house. It wasn't losing the money. It wasn't even losing the marriage. The hardest part was losing the future I thought I was building. For years I had imagined growing old beside Jasmine. I imagined family vacations, retirement, grandchildren, a life filled with memories. Now those images felt like scenes from someone else's story. At work I tried to act normal. I showed up every morning, completed my responsibilities, attended meetings, answered emails, solved problems. But inside I felt hollow. My coworkers noticed. They never said much, but I could see it in their eyes. People knew what had happened. News travels fast, especially bad news. One afternoon my friend Marcus from accounting sat beside me during lunch. "You okay?" I forced a smile. "Yay." He shook his head. "No, you're not." I stared down at my sandwich. For a moment I considered telling him everything. How I felt like a failure. How I replayed Jasmine's words every night. How I questioned my worth every time I looked in a mirror. Instead, I simply nodded. "I've been better." Marcus placed a hand on my shoulder. "You'll get through it." I appreciated the gesture. But at the time, I didn't believe him. Because every day seemed worse than the one before. Then came the social media posts. At first, I tried not to look. I really did. But curiosity is a dangerous thing. One evening, I opened my phone. A mutual friend had posted photos from a rooftop party. There was Jasmine, smiling, laughing, holding a glass of champagne, surrounded by people dressed in designer clothing. I stared at the image for several seconds. Part of me expected sadness, regrets, some sign that she missed what we once had. Instead, she looked happier than ever. Over the following weeks, more pictures appeared. Luxury restaurants, expensive hotels, exclusive events. The comments underneath the photos were even worse. Living your best life. You deserve happiness. Leveling up. Proud of you. Every compliment felt like another reminder that people believed leaving me had improved her life. Eventually, I stopped looking. Not because it no longer hurt, because it hurt too much. Meanwhile, my finances were becoming a serious problem. The divorce settlement had drained most of my savings. Rent consumed a large portion of every paycheck. Utility bills piled up. Unexpected expenses appeared constantly. One month my car needed repairs. The next month my insurance increased. Then my refrigerator stopped working. I began calculating every dollar before spending it. Every grocery trip felt like a strategy meeting. Every purchase required consideration. One Friday evening I sat at my kitchen table reviewing my bank account. The numbers made my stomach drop. After rent and bills I had less than $60 available. $60. I stared at the screen in disbelief. I was 37 years old, working full-time, and somehow living paycheck to paycheck. Again. I leaned back in my chair and closed my eyes. For a brief moment I wondered if Jasmine had been right. Maybe I wasn't enough. Maybe I really was average. Maybe I had wasted years chasing a future that would never come. Those thoughts became dangerous. The kind of thoughts that slowly poison a person's confidence. The kind that convince you to stop trying. Fortunately, something inside me refused to quit completely. Every morning I still got out of bed. Every morning I still showed up. Even when I didn't feel like it. Even when I wanted to stay under the blankets and disappear from the world. Life continued. Then one morning I received another reminder of how far I had fallen. I was cleaning out old boxes when I discovered a photo album. Inside were pictures from our wedding. Pictures from vacations. Pictures from birthdays. Pictures from ordinary days that once felt important. I sat on the floor flipping through page after page. There we were, smiling on a beach, laughing at a barbecue, celebrating our anniversary. For a moment I almost forgot how things ended. For a moment I remembered why I loved her. Then I remembered how she looked at me the night she asked for a divorce. Cold. Disappointed. Certain I would never become somebody. I closed the album and placed it back inside the box. Some memories are better left untouched. By the beginning of the third month my emotional pain had started turning into determination. Not because life had improved. Because I was tired of feeling sorry for myself. I started exercising again. Nothing dramatic. Just morning walks. A few workouts. Small steps. But they helped. I began reading books before bed instead of staring at social media. I listened to podcasts during my commute. I focused on improving myself. Not to prove Jasmine wrong. At least that is what I told myself. The truth was more complicated. Part of me still wanted to prove her wrong. Part of me wanted success so badly that one day she would regret everything. One Saturday afternoon I drove across town to run errands. The weather was hot. Traffic was terrible. My gas tank was nearly empty, and I was already frustrated before the day even began. I stopped at a small gas station I had visited many times before. The place looked worn down. Faded signs, cracked pavement, old fuel pumps. The kind of place people forget exists. After filling my tank, I walked inside to buy a bottle of water and a cheap sandwich. While standing in line, I checked my bank balance again. $43. That was all I had left until payday. I shook my head. The cashier scanned my items. I reached for my wallet. Then something caught my attention. Beside the register stood a brightly colored lottery machine. Normally I ignored it. I had never been a gambler. I always considered lottery tickets a waste of money. But that day felt different. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was frustration. Maybe it was pure desperation. I don't know. I simply stood there staring at the machine. The jackpot number flashed across the screen. $750 million. The amount looked ridiculous. Almost fictional. The cashier noticed me looking. Big jackpot, huh? I laughed. Yay. Someone's about to get lucky. The cashier smiled. Could be you. I nearly walked away. In fact, I took 2 steps toward the door. Then something stopped me. Not a voice. Not a sign. Just a strange feeling. A feeling I still can't explain. I turned around. How much for one ticket? The cashier told me. I hesitated for another second, then handed over the money. A moment later, the ticket slid from the machine. Thin. Ordinary. Easy to overlook. I placed it inside my wallet without thinking much about it. Then I left. As I drove away, I laughed at myself. What are the odds? Millions of people buy tickets every week. Nobody actually wins. At least that's what I believed. I had absolutely no idea that the small piece of paper sitting quietly in my wallet was about to transform my life in ways I couldn't even imagine. And within days, a phone call would arrive that would leave me speechless. A phone call so unbelievable that my first reaction would be to assume it was a scam. A phone call that would change everything forever. I stared at my phone for nearly 30 seconds before answering. The number was unfamiliar. Normally, I ignored calls from unknown numbers. Most of them were telemarketers, robocalls, scammers trying to sell something. For some reason, I answered anyway. Hello? A professional voice greeted me. Good afternoon. Am I speaking with Darren Brooks? Yes. Mr. Brooks, my name is Angela. I'm calling regarding a lottery ticket purchased 3 days ago. My stomach tightened. Immediately, I assumed it was a scam. I had heard stories about people receiving fake calls, people pretending to represent lottery organizations, people trying to steal personal information. I almost hung up. Then she said something that made me freeze. She read the exact serial number printed on my ticket. My eyes widened. How do you know that? There was a brief pause. Mr. Brooks, according to our records, you are the holder of one of the winning tickets. I laughed. Not because it was funny, because it sounded impossible. Winning ticket? Yes. The jackpot winning ticket. For several seconds I couldn't speak. My brain simply refused to process the information. It felt like someone had told me gravity no longer existed. I looked around my apartment. The old couch. The worn carpet. The unpaid bills sitting on the counter. None of it matched what I was hearing. I think you have the wrong person. We do not. Mr. Brooks, we need you to visit our office immediately for verification. I sat down. My legs suddenly felt weak. How much? Another pause. Then she answered. $750 million. The room became silent. Completely silent. I heard my own heartbeat. Nothing else. 750 million. The number didn't feel real. It felt like something from a movie. Something that happened to other people. Not people living alone in tiny apartments. Not people with $40 left in their bank account. Not people whose wives had divorced them 3 months earlier. I thanked her, hung up, and stared at the wall. 5 minutes passed, then 10, then 15. I still hadn't moved. Finally, I grabbed my wallet, pulled out the ticket, and looked at it. The same ticket I had almost never purchased. The same ticket I almost left behind at the gas station. My hands began shaking. That night I barely slept. Every few minutes I checked the ticket again. I was terrified something would happen to it. Terrified I had misheard. Terrified I would wake up and discover it had all been a dream. The next morning I arrived at the lottery headquarters. The building was larger than I expected. Modern glass walls. Security personnel. Professional staff. The entire experience felt unreal. Several people escorted me into a private room. Documents were reviewed. Identification was verified. The ticket was examined multiple times. Then finally a woman entered carrying a folder. She smiled. Congratulations, Mr. Brooks. The ticket is authentic. You are officially the winner. I closed my eyes. For a moment I thought I might cry. 3 months earlier I had been sitting in my car outside the house I lost. 3 months earlier I felt like the biggest failure in America. Now I was officially one of the wealthiest people in the country. The contrast was impossible to comprehend. News spread quickly. Much faster than I expected. Within hours, reporters were calling. Television producers were reaching out. Journalists wanted interviews. Everyone wanted my story, especially after learning where I had been only months earlier. The divorced man, the struggling worker, the guy who bought a ticket with almost no money left. People loved the story. And soon I received an invitation that shocked me. A major national television network wanted me to appear live during a special broadcast. Millions of viewers would be watching. At first I declined. I wasn't interested in fame. I wasn't interested in attention. Then my advisors explained the value. The appearance would introduce me to the public. It would allow me to control my own story. Eventually I agreed. The day of the broadcast arrived faster than expected. I was driven to the studio. Professional makeup artists prepared me. Producers reviewed the schedule. Staff members moved quickly through the hallways. Everything felt larger than life. While waiting backstage, I caught my reflection in a mirror. For a moment, I barely recognized myself. Not because of the money, because of the man looking back at me. 3 months earlier, I looked defeated, broken, lost. Now there was something different. Confidence, not arrogance, not pride. Confidence, the kind that comes from surviving your worst days. The host greeted me moments before we went live. Ready? I smiled. As ready as I'll ever be. The countdown began. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The cameras switched on. Bright studio lights filled the room. The audience erupted into applause. My heart pounded. The host introduced me to millions of viewers across the country. Then came the moment everyone remembers. A giant ceremonial check was carried onto the stage. $750 million. The audience exploded. People stood, cheered, clapped. Some were laughing. Others looked completely stunned. I stood there smiling while cameras captured every angle. At that exact moment somewhere, across the city, another television was playing the same broadcast. And sitting in front of it was Jasmine. She had no idea what she was about to see. No idea that the man she called average, the man she abandoned, the man she said would never become somebody, was standing on national television holding one of the largest lottery prizes in American history. And when she finally recognized my face on that screen, her entire world stopped. When the television host announced my name, Jasmine felt as if the air had been sucked out of the room. At least that is what she later told me. She had been hosting a small gathering inside the luxury apartment she rented after our divorce. Several friends were there. Music played in the background. Champagne glasses sat on a marble countertop. People laughed. People talked. Everything seemed perfect. Then someone noticed the breaking news broadcast. A woman in the room pointed toward the television. Wait a second. Isn't that your ex-husband? The conversation stopped. Everyone turned toward the screen. And there I was, standing under bright studio lights, smiling, holding a giant check worth $750 million. For several seconds, nobody spoke. Then somebody gasped. Another person covered their mouth. Someone else whispered, "No way." Jasmine later admitted she thought she was hallucinating. She thought stress had somehow created an illusion. But the television continued broadcasting. The cameras continued filming. The audience continued cheering. And my face remained on the screen, the same face she had looked at only 3 months earlier when she told me I would never become somebody. Her phone began vibrating almost immediately. Friends were calling. Family members were calling. People were sending screenshots. Social media exploded. Within hours, clips from the interview had spread everywhere. Millions of views, millions of comments. Millions of reactions. And unfortunately for Jasmine, many people knew our history. Some mutual friends remembered the things she used to say, the comparisons, the criticism, the comments about successful men, the jokes about my income. The embarrassing part was not that she divorced me. The embarrassing part was that she had spent months publicly acting as though leaving me was an upgrade. Now the internet had a different opinion. Meanwhile, my life transformed overnight. Financial advisors appeared. Attorneys appeared. Investment experts appeared. Everyone wanted meetings. Everyone had suggestions. Everyone had opportunities. I listened carefully. But I remembered something important. Money changes many people. I did not want it to change me. The first thing I did was pay every debt. Every single one. The credit cards. The loans. The remaining obligations from the divorce. Everything disappeared. For the first time in years, I felt completely free. Then I bought a house. Not because I wanted to show off. Not because I wanted revenge. Because I wanted peace. A place that truly felt like home. Large windows. A quiet neighborhood. A beautiful backyard. Nothing excessive. Nothing ridiculous. Just a home. The kind of home I once dreamed of building with my wife. After that, I started helping people. One funded scholarships. I donated to children's hospitals. I supported programs that helped struggling families. I paid for medical treatments for people who could not afford them. Those moments brought me more happiness than any luxury purchase ever could. The strange thing about success is that it reveals people. Some individuals genuinely celebrated my good fortune. Others appeared only after hearing about the money. People I had not spoken to in years suddenly wanted lunch. Former classmates wanted business proposals. Distant relatives wanted financial assistance. Everyone seemed interested in reconnecting. I learned quickly who cared about Darren.com and who cared about $750 million. 6 months passed. Then 9. Then almost a year. Life finally felt stable again. The anger from the divorce slowly disappeared. Not because I forgot, because I healed. One evening I sat alone on my patio watching the sunset. The sky glowed orange and gold. A peaceful breeze moved through the trees. For the first time in a very long time I felt completely content. Then my doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. I walked through the house and opened the front door. The moment I saw her, I froze. Jasmine. She stood there quietly. Gone was the confidence she once carried. Gone was the arrogance. Gone was the certainty. Her eyes looked tired. Sir. Almost nervous. For several seconds neither of us spoke. Finally she smiled weakly. Hi Darren. I had imagined this moment many times. In some versions I slammed the door. In others I delivered a speech. Sometimes I imagined telling her everything I had wanted to say. Instead I simply stood there, because reality feels different than imagination. Would you like to come in? She nodded. A few minutes later we sat across from each other. The silence felt familiar, yet completely different. Eventually Jasmine looked around the room. You've done well. I smiled politely. Life's been interesting. She lowered her eyes. Then came the words I knew were coming. I made a mistake. I said nothing. She continued. The truth is I was unhappy long before the divorce. I convinced myself money would solve everything. I convinced myself success looked a certain way. I convinced myself you were holding me back. Tears began forming in her eyes. I was wrong. For a moment I felt sorry for her. Not because she lost access to wealth, because she finally understood something that took me years to learn. Money can improve your circumstances, but it cannot repair your character. It cannot replace loyalty. It cannot create genuine love. Jasmine wiped her eyes. When I saw you on television, I thought about everything. The apartment, the late nights, the dreams we shared, the sacrifices you made. I should have appreciated them. I should have appreciated you. The room became quiet again. Then she asked the question I already knew was coming. Do you think we could start over? I looked at her for several seconds. Not with anger. Not with hatred. Just honesty. The old version of me might have said yes. The lonely version. The heartbroken version. The man sitting in that tiny apartment crying himself to sleep. But that man no longer existed. I took a deep breath. Jasmine, I forgive you. The tears began flowing immediately. But forgiveness and reconciliation are not the same thing. She closed her eyes, as if she already knew the answer. I continued. You didn't leave because we were struggling. You left because you stopped believing in me. And the truth is, life will always have difficult seasons. Love isn't tested when everything is easy. It's tested when everything is hard. She nodded slowly. I watched another tear roll down her face. Then I said the words that finally closed that chapter of my life. You walked away before the story was finished. Neither of us spoke after that. A few minutes later she stood. Thank you for hearing me out. I nodded. Thank you for coming. She walked toward the door. Paused. Then turned back one final time. Congratulations, Darren. Not for the money. For the man you've become. And for the first time since our divorce I smiled without pain. After she left I returned to the patio. The sun had almost disappeared below the horizon. I sat quietly thinking about everything that had happened. The divorce, the heartbreak, the loneliness, the lottery, the success, the lessons. Then I realized something. The greatest thing I gained was never the $750 million. It was discovering my worth before anyone else recognized it. Because the people who truly belong in your life do not stay only when you are winning. They stay when you are struggling. They stay when you are doubted. They stay when the future is uncertain. And sometimes the biggest blessing in life is not the door that opens. It is the door that closes. Because if Jasmine had never left, I might never have discovered the strength that was inside me all along. And that lesson was worth far more than $750 million. significant and educational value. This story teaches that loyalty should never be based on money, status, or temporary circumstances. Many people judge others by what they have today instead of what they may become tomorrow. Darren's journey shows that success often arrives after seasons of struggle, rejection, and disappointment. The story also reminds us that character is more valuable than wealth. While money changed Darren's lifestyle, it was his humility, resilience, and generosity that earned true respect. Most importantly, it proves that those who believe in themselves during difficult times can overcome setbacks and build a better future.